Thank you, Mayron. I am Jim Hermanson from the William E. Boeing Department of Aeronautics at the U, and I'm pleased to bring you this afternoon's distinguished panel. We're going to be talking about public-private partnerships and the impact on education. So I'm happy to introduce this distinguished team, and I'll go down in order of appearance here. So first up, to my immediate left, first at the table, is Professor Chuck Pezeshki from your very own Washington State University. And I had the pleasure of meeting Chuck last fall, and we talked about design programs and the like during my visit here. For his bio is he's known to his students and industry partners around the world as Dr. Chuck. And he's the director of the Industrial Design Clinic here at Washington State, which is the primary instrument for the senior capstone design experience here in the School of Materials and Mechanical and Materials Engineering at Washington State. The program's been running for 20 years, and the seniors have completed through this program more than 250 projects, with a technology adoption rate by the corporate sponsors of an impressive approximately 80%, with gross revenues exceeding $2.5 million, almost all of that in increments of around 10K or less. Chuck currently does research also in design thinking process and how human relationships and empathy affect the development of the rational mind. Okay, so the format we're going to do here is I will introduce each of our distinguished speakers, and then I've asked them to talk for 5 or 10 minutes and share their perspectives and experiences and thoughts on industry and university partnerships and impact on education. So thank you, Chuck, and welcome. Next, to Chuck's immediate left, we have Ms. Anna Wieman from our own University of Washington College of Engineering. And her background is Anna directs the engineering co-op and internship program at the University of Washington in Seattle. Prior to joining the UW, Anna worked in industry, providing her with an understanding of both academia and industry. More than 300 Huskies, the University of Washington people, each year earn academic credit through the co-op program in the College of Engineering. So thank you for joining us, Anna. All right, next to Anna's immediate left, I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Madison Peck. She is one of ours. She's a graduate from our William E. Boeing Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and her bio reads as follows. She grew up in the greater Seattle area and always knew she would be an engineer. I started at the University of Washington in 2008, graduated last June with a degree in aeronautical and astronautical engineering, and a minor in Italian language and literature. Interesting aside there. She began research with Dr. Chris Lum at the UW last August, and in March of this year started a software engineering internship at Insitu. So still another perspective from this varied group. And then to Madison's immediate left, and last but not least, I'd like to introduce Mr. Art Crowe. He's the Director of Training Solutions at Corsair Engineering. In that capacity, he's been directly involved in the development of training programs for 2 unmanned aerial systems. Additionally, he oversaw the development of the ScanEagle that you've heard about, full mission training device for the Insitu group, and UAS training simulators for the University of North Dakota and Indiana State University. Prior to joining Corsair, Art spent 24 years as a Marine Corps officer, including flying the AV-8B Harrier. That must have been an exciting adventure. And also, he has worked as a Russian cryptologic linguist, and tells me that he actually does speak Ruski. So, fascinating aside there. His final tour as a Marine Corps officer was as an instructor at the University of Washington's Naval ROTC unit, where he taught several courses in warfare history, as well as leadership and management as an assistant professor. Art holds bachelor's degrees in business administration from the UW and a master's in business and management from Boston University. In addition, he completed graduate certificate programs in expeditionary warfare and command and staff from the Marine Corps University. So we have quite a background here from industry, academia, military, international. This is going to lead to a great discussion. So thank you all for coming. This is going to be great. And so the format we're going to do is I've asked each of our distinguished panelists to talk for about 5 or 10 minutes and just share his or her perspectives on the overall issue of public-private partnerships and the impact on education and internships and anything. And then after that, we'll open up to discussion and take Q&A from the audience. So, Professor Pezeshki, you're first. So you should stay put.
Oh, okay. Can I see my slides?
Yes.
Should I just pull them up here?
Yes, you can come up here.
You want to present?
What do you,
I have yours.
I want to do what you guys want me to do.
I have your slides. I have your slides up here.
I'll sit here out of the way.
These are the right ones.
All right, great. Yeah, awesome. And my theme pretty much about everything is it's all about relationships. I'm going to buzz through the slides pretty quickly. I go by Dr. Chuck. I bring up the money because nobody believes me when I say undergraduates are really smart. Well, some people in this room do, and I'm telling you, they're an incredible resource. They're not just an incredible resource, they're also an incredible trust that we have shared with us, and I feel pretty profoundly that what we want to do for as far as our obligation to the future is to make our students be simply the smartest and most insightful young people we can. I also want you to know that I haven't discovered anything that people who were a lot smarter than me haven't figured it out, but it is interesting to bring a lot of this stuff in front of an engineering audience. I'll quote the middle one. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. And so one of the things that we face as we try to go through this technological society is realizing that the answer to technology is likely not going to be more technology. It's actually likely to be social organization. And you can take, if there is a Buddha higher than Buddha, it is not Buddha, and put the word technology in there and realize I haven't figured anything out new. I've just kind of understood what people before me have figured out. What do? I have about 120 kids a year, one semester class, 8 to 14 projects a semester. It's a little bit of a hustle. 50 to 70 students. The program life, it's been going 20 years, you know. But the thing I'm really proud of is our success rate, and we have a pretty phenomenal adoption rate. And you know, when we do something, the companies actually use it. I don't grade. I basically give A's, but students have to complete work to spec. And that's a very, very high bar. But, of course, if you ask any of the industry people in the room, that's what they have to do. How did I get going? Well, about 20 years ago, I jumped up on the table because I thought our kids needed to collaborate with industry. I had no idea why. I just thought it was appropriate. And I said, we will collaborate with industry like a good Viking. And I went out and I got a bunch of projects. I didn't charge any money, and they were all failures. So a good friend and a member of the college board, guy by chief engineer for BP named Les Okonek, who I didn't know at the time, and he's like what I call a super cougar. These are people that love us no matter what we do. Calls me up and says, you know, I hear you're trying to get industrial projects. And I go, yeah. He says, I want you to come and visit the oil refinery. And this was back when I was still young and didn't get to travel that much. So I said, sure. So I come out there, and he sits me down in the BP office, and I know Candace has been there many times too. And he looks and he goes, okay, I'm going to give you a project. And I was 20 years younger. I said, great. And then he goes, oh no, I'm going to pay you for it. And then I kind of gulped. And then he looked at me and he goes, and then I'm going to expect you to get it done. I was like, but these are undergraduates. And then it reminded me of this quote from Ghostbusters, you know, where the guys have lost their jobs, they're in the university, you know, and Harold Ramis, you know, says to Dan Aykroyd, you know, could we get a job in industry? And he goes, you've never been out of college. You don't know what it's like out there. I've worked in the private sector. They expect results. So at any rate, this is the secret slide. It's in Chinese because I got to give it in Chinese a week from now. So, but bear with me. I'm going to beg for a little forgiveness. I got the assignment on Friday, so I didn't have a chance to take out the Chinese. But what I have discovered, the punchline, is that actually what creates the rational mind in our students is giving them a customer. Because when you give students a customer, they are forced to develop empathy. Now, the field of empathy is actually relatively poorly developed. There are some people who are famous. But what I have come up with is a scale of empathy after reading tons and tons of books. And it's relatively novel, but it's evolutionary, meaning that basically one through development leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. At the bottom level are what we call mirroring behaviors. This is if I yawn, people out there yawning. Emotional empathy, most people, not everybody, but most people have some level of emotional empathy. So if you see somebody crying, then you're going to feel sorry for them. Rational empathy is the thing that we really get from the customers. It's the combination of having to read your customer, look at their face, judge their emotional reaction, while at the same time using your prefrontal cortex to come up with a design solution. And then global empathy is what we would like more people to have, but it's still relatively elusive and subject of a longer conversation. One thing that is true is that if you look at my little picture with spatial and temporal scales, resources and energy increasing, number of people decreasing on the side, that tells you kind of how empathy falls out. I know I'm a mechanical engineering professor. Just, trust me. Okay, one of the problems when you start talking about empathy, especially in front of non-empathetic environments, is that people have a problem with it, and it's what I call the old fish, young fish problem. And the old fish says to the young fish, the water's warm today, and the young fish looks back and goes, what's water? Okay. One of the challenges in getting some of these concepts through in the academic environment is that we live in a world that is, that basically prizes non-empathetic thinking, and non-empathetic thinking is really important. I'm not saying it's not. But at the same time, it leads to right-wrong thinking and less multi-solution thinking, which is the design mind. So that's my little fish slide. Like I said, a great story to understand the development of how somebody develops in the course of life. And of course, my class is Groundhog Day. I don't know if you've seen the movie, but yeah, Bill Murray starts off at the survival level, and he's got the groundhog, and he's very, very egocentric and unhappy. He's authoritarian, tries to break all the rules of the system. And what I do, just so everybody knows in the class, is we spend a lot of time in legalistic algorithmic modes in the university. And what I do when I give these kids these projects is I give them a breakthrough opportunity. I give them a chance to become a performance-based, goal-based thinker. And that's actually how Bill Murray gets out of his rut. He learns how to play the piano, okay? So, and the reason for that is if you want to establish excellence, first you have to establish a relationship of excellence with yourself. And that's what these projects do. And then after that, it goes to community and some other things that are more interesting that we just don't have time for today. Okay, non-empathetic versus empathetic. Both modes of thinking are important. There is no better or worse. There just is what we are. So non-empathetic, belief-based simplex channel, static. It has the intent of maximizing reliability, and it's very, very common in universities. The reason it's common in universities is because it's been our mission for over 2,000, 3,000 years. And that's where we come from, because it used to be that information was corrupt, and we had to go through and we had to sort through, and the job of the scholar was to figure out what wasn't true, blah, 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 blah. The relationships are low trust. I'm a professor whether you like it or not. At some level, I get to study what I want, low responsibility, and it's characterized by this right or wrong thinking. Contrast that to an empathetic relational environment, which is data-driven, duplex channel. If you don't get what I say, we got to sit around until we work it out. Intent of maximizing validity. If I make something that's really cool, the customer can't use it, that's great, doctor, check, but you just took my money and didn't give me anything. The other thing that's really, really important about empathetic relational environments is they emphasize coherence. One of the key things that generates coherence, of course, is pursuit of the profit motive, but there are other motives. And the relationships are higher trust. They're independently generated. High responsibility. Okay, and no better design crew than the crew of the Starship Enterprise. You got Scotty, he's pretty externally defined authoritarian. You got Mr. Spock, he's your university professor. You got James Kirk, right? He's the multi-solution design thinker. And then finally, very important guy, you got Leonard McCoy. He is the communitarian reflector. I'm a doctor, not a something or other, whatever. Okay. All right. These systems actually work according to mathematical principles, okay? And if you want to think about it from an information theoretic perspective, you can see that hierarchical environments have lots and lots of problems with information corruption. And we know that because we know that even with this lecture, you might get 20% of what I talked about. You'll be like, oh yeah, that's the dude that talked about Groundhog Day, talked about how much money he made, and he liked Star Trek, That might be your takeaway. Hopefully it's a little more than that. As opposed to independently generated relationships where I have to worry whether you get it or not. Because if you don't, you're going to be mad at me. And, that's not going to be cool. So in the context of my design clinic, I'm very, very conscious about how I manage the students in developing those empathetic relationships. How am I doing for time? A couple more minutes? Okay, I'm almost done. Students and sponsors have a relationship. The sponsor starts as a customer, but it's a dirty little secret. It's actually not a dirty little secret. They do end as a mentor because they know about their discipline. But the first thing that I want my teams to do is develop peer-level accountability. So the sponsor is not allowed to be a mentor at the beginning of the process. Okay? They don't share design solutions with students. They go to lunch. We all know you got to know how to go to lunch. And then conference calls and feedback evolve the relationship. I'm very much into this idea of relationship evolution, relationship between the students and the clinic director. They have no idea what I do mostly. I lay out the framework. I'm like this weird dude that sits on the couch in the back of class. I have this thing called the high trust door. People come in, basically universities are a low trust environment. I don't let kids work on things individually when we start. They have to work on things in pairs, because then they have to make sense of it to each other. I start as the professor historian. I take great pictures of all the people. I think this is really important. We have lots of lousy pictures of our kids up. It takes like $500 to buy a real backdrop and take real pictures of everybody. And then 5 years down the path, maybe they think I'm a Jedi Master, Obi-Wan, out on Tatooine, out there in the middle of nothing. All right. The relationship between the clinic director and the sponsor. Okay, I'm accountable to all the people that I get money from. And, I have to understand what they want. Okay, and everybody wants something different. I mean, there's always the obvious benefits of HR and jobs and the value of the product. But lots of people want somebody to talk to. And if I have to be a psychologist, Candace, I want you to know, if somebody calls me on Christmas about a donation, I take it. And I have all sorts of different relationships. Some people want to have an intellectual discussion. One guy wanted me to fly out to Redmond, which I did. I sit down, he goes, I want you to talk about the dynamic between Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and Benjamin Netanyahu. And I said, okay, I actually know a little bit about that. So I spent 58 minutes on that, and then I said, what about the project? And he goes, oh, that's in the mail. You'll get it tomorrow. So you got to find out what people want. You got to give it to them. You got to be empathetic. And, I work behind the scenes on the social issues to ensure the student success, and I don't allow authoritarian sponsors. If you're going to tell the kids what to do, it's going to fail, because what's going to happen is the kids are already really good at that. They'll just get passive, and they'll just okay, well, we're just waiting. Okay, there's no substitute for experience. At this level, there's important parts of everything that we do in the university, okay? This is not intended to say, hey, all that thermo, that doesn't matter. No, it really matters. It's actually scaffolding. But wrapping it up at the end requires experiences. Describe the taste of a steak or the light through trees. And then if you're leading an organization like this, you got to model the behavior you wish to see. I always say, I'm not allowed to get mad at the students except once a semester, because if I did, they wouldn't talk to me. So, and then finally, you got to know yourself, because, we're all humans. We go out there. I mean, I don't keep a running tally of mistakes because it's too depressing, but I at least am aware of them. I kind of process through and get over it. And then the last part is make a commitment. And one of my favorite quotes about commitment, which I'll end on, is if you want to know what it's like to be a big wave surfer, grab a board, paddle out across the break, point your board down the face of a grinder, and make a commitment. That's when you know the truth. If you want to do this stuff, get a project and make a reasonable commitment. And that's a longer story, which we don't have time for today. And I'd be happy to talk to people about that. But this was a quote by Greg Knoll, the first surfer to surf Big Waimea in Hawaii. Good?
Thank you very much, Chuck. All right, one quick question for you. You've been doing this for a number of years,
yes.
Running this program. This notion of empathetic thinking among both students and your industry partners, how would you say that's evolving? Is this emerging, or long ways to go, or we're well down the road, or how would you assess that?
Does this work? I don't know. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, how do I assess that? Well, look, I mean, when I started this, I had no clue what I was doing, okay? I was a guilty Catholic. And I was raised by the good sisters, said, don't lie to somebody and tell them you're going to get something done if you're not going to get it done. And so I insisted on doing that. And then I had a lot of help from the outside. I had no problem with modeling successful design behavior that I witnessed out in industry. I've worked with 60 different companies. Some of these people are doing the right things. I didn't hang the moon or anything like that. So really the key is to be able to look out there and go, you know what? That's a winning practice. We need to incorporate that. BP, or they were ARCO at the time, gave somebody who stayed for 9 months and really evolved my design process. I'll never forget when this guy's name's Brett Emmons looks at me and he goes, so where's the specs for your project? This was in 1996. And I looked at him and I go, spec? What's a spec? And then, of course, he educated me and I became enlightened and started using that. So model, take the behavior that you see out there that's already a success. And then don't be afraid to put the students in front of the customers. We have this thing that the students are going to embarrass us. They don't. They're so awesome. I mean, and if you think that the kids are awesome, they pick up on that right away. Now, look, that doesn't mean every student I've had is perfect. I mean, I have my share of psychopaths like everybody else in every class, okay? I mean, they're out there. They're part of the statistical percentage, But they'll generally do, if you have the expectation and you transfer that to the students that they are smart, intelligent people, and they must be accountable to each other, because that's the key accountability. I'm a professor. They're used to being non-accountable to me for a long time. So you set them up so they're accountable with each other, and it's just the empathetic development happens. The customer's there. Believe it or not, it takes about 6 weeks. It's actually time dependent. The one thing that's great about externally defined relationships is, hey, I'm a professor right now. But to develop trust in what I have to say takes time. And they take time to trust each other and then trust the customer. And it honestly takes, I like to say it's 40 days, 40 nights. And that's a whole nother discussion in itself. So.
Okay. Anna?
So my name is Anna Wieman.
Wait. Let me turn this off.
So my name is Anna Wieman, and I run the University of Washington Engineering Co-op and Internship Program. And in this program, we connect students with industry, but we do it in a little different way than Dr. Chuck does. Students actually compete for jobs. Those would be internships or co-op jobs. And they are hired depending on whether they're the right person to be hired by the company. So we produce a lot of events, we do a lot of advising, we work with students in departments to make sure students have all the opportunities possible, to encourage them to take work experiences and really test their engineering learning in the classroom in a real-world setting, real-world as an industry setting. We believe that this serves students in a couple of ways. One is it helps them make career decisions. Although a lot of students end up in a certain degree and they think they know what they want to do for a living, they really don't. And once they get out in the field, they find out things that are specific, like whether they want to work for a large company, a small company, something where they're working in a really strong team, something where they're working autonomously. It also accelerates learning. And I think Dr. Chuck would verify that with lots of data. It accelerates learning quite a lot when you actually are experiencing and applying what you've learned in your classroom. And students come back to courses, and they usually do a lot better. Some students in the summer will say, no, I'd better do my classes instead of working because I need to get better grades. The truth is, if they go out to work, they come back, and the data shows they get better in their classes because they're actually applying what they learned. It serves the college quite a bit because industry will approach our office as their first interaction with the college or with the university. And quite often they think, well, let's start with baby steps. Let's see how internships go. And then if you really help us connect with some good students, then maybe we'll take the next step and get involved with faculty, maybe sponsor some research or collaborate with research, and possibly be giving a big gift. That's a wonderful thing. Sometimes we are that first person that industry will contact, and that's very important for us to be able to do that. Sometimes faculty will direct industry to us, or students will direct industry to us, but we help them connect in a number of different ways. We also do a lot of maintaining of those industry relations for the college. We also serve industry in a number of ways. So industry tell us that they want to be part of the educational process. They want to be part of creating that pipeline of talent for them, not just for their company, but for their entire industry. They also want, of course, as you can imagine, an elongated interview process. They want to test the students before they hire them. And that's a very important thing because once you hire someone permanently, that's a very big commitment. And so why not, if you have this pipeline of hundreds of students every year, and I don't mean just summer, but 6-month or rotational internships, you really know who that student is before you hire them. It also introduces industry to the university. It helps them feel as if they're welcome here and that we really want that collaborative environment, which is sometimes difficult for industry to really comprehend, that we are here working with them to create the student talent and the employer talent that they're really looking for. Most of the faculty I've actually talked to say they've done co-ops. For the faculty who are in the room, how many had an industry experience before they graduated? So it's pretty common to get some experience in industry prior to graduation. Students also earn a lot of good money. The average salary for our students last year was $22 an hour. So that's a pretty good chunk of change for a student. And about 30% of the jobs were outside of Washington State. I think that's all I have to say. Do you have any questions for me specifically at this time?
Okay, well, I have one as your moderator.
Great.
You know, at the end of these internship and co-op experiences, you must get some feedback from the students and feedback from our industry partners. So in each category, in the student category and in the industry category, what kind of feedback have you gotten that you found especially interesting or surprising from either group?
So for students to earn credit, which they do through our program, they have to do a couple of things, and they have to set out their learning goals in collaboration with their supervisor. The employer also has to complete an evaluation of the student, and that's part of where we get a lot of data from employers about what they think about our students. I think for the most part, I'm very impressed at how impressed employers are with our students. Dr. Chuck is exactly correct. Students really know a lot. Undergraduates are performing very well in the job. Yes, they're very quick. From students' perspective, I think they underestimate their abilities. And so, for example, there are a lot of times a job posting, and the requirements for the job might be this long, and the student will not apply for the job because they can't do all those things. Students don't realize that employers are hiring students for their ability to learn, not for their proven history of being able to do something. If I can or cannot turn on this mic, that's not what I'm getting hired to do, and I have to have proved that I can turn on the mic or turn off the mic. That's something that you get at Burger King. Can you flip a burger or not? Yes, you can. Okay, we'll hire you. For students in engineering internships, they want to know if you can learn to do the job. And I think Madison will talk a little bit more about what she's learned on the job versus what she thought she could do before she started.
Okay, so natural segue into Madison. You're next.
Yeah, hi. I'm going to see if I can. So I don't have to lean forward the whole time. So my name is Madison Peck. I'm a software engineering intern at Insitu right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal experience with public-private research. And then I'm going to kind of talk about how I feel it definitely improves education on a personal level. So I was kind of a unique case. I didn't actually participate in student research as a student. I only started research after I graduated. And I'm a software engineer, but I got my degree in aerospace engineering. And I didn't actually think that I was interested in software at all until about 2/3 of the way through my senior year of college, which is kind of a bad time to learn that you want to learn something more in college. So I unfortunately didn't have an opportunity to take any computer science courses or to learn more about software and programming while in college. So after I graduated, I started looking for jobs, and anyone who's been out there knows that it can be a little bit daunting. You know, you fill out resume after resume, application after application, and all you get are rejections, and it's not a good feeling in general. So fortunately for me, the aerospace department doesn't take its former seniors off of the mailing list until September. So when Dr. Lem sent out the email asking if there were students who were interested in participating in the research with Insitu, I was still on the mailing list and I got the email. And I was hesitant to respond because he was asking for students and I was no longer a student. But I bit the bullet and responded anyway, and he was kind enough to let me join the team. And it was the best decision of my life, which I know sounds rather exaggerated and ridiculous, but I can guarantee that I would not be where I am without having been on the team. I immediately started learning tons of things that I didn't have the chance to learn in college. I was using MATLAB again. I started learning Visual Studio and C#, and learning how to code and learning how to program, which was something that I was really interested in. I was also working with a team working on a product that was going to be part of industry, which is one of the main things that you get from working within private public research that you don't get in the classroom. Is you have a customer that is expecting something from you, and when you're done with it, you don't just turn it in, get a grade, and then brain dump. You turn it in and it outlives you and you can continue working on it, or it gets developed beyond what you contribute, which is an awesome feeling. So about November, Insitu contacted Dr. Lem and said that they were looking to harvest some interns out of the group of students that was doing research for them, and they wanted someone in the spring. And conveniently, I was the only one who wasn't going to be in school in the spring. So I applied and started the position on March 10th. So one thing that I really wanted to emphasize was that my experience working with industry, working with Insitu during this research, was not only a learning opportunity as far as learning software and learning skills, technical skills. It was an opportunity to experience a working environment. So when I started working at Insitu, the transition was almost seamless because I had already worked with the team that I was joining. I already knew how they functioned, and I was familiar with the product that I was going to be working with. So I don't really have a whole lot more to say other than join research early. Jump on that train as early as you can because it's an amazing experience. Don't wait like I did. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Madison. My follow-on question for you is, based on your industry experiences, so far, starting out, what things would you say the university did a great job of preparing you for? And can you identify maybe an area of growth, something we could do even better?
Oh, geez, loaded question. I think that as far as the university and the AA department, they not 100% certain. I mean, there was the senior design project was another opportunity to take specs and meet requirements and work with a large team. So that definitely provided a really good experience. They also pushed people to network as often as they could. As far as things they could do better, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head right now. Give me a minute.
All right, well, we'll have some more discussion time in a bit. So, all right, thank you very much. Art, over to you.
Good afternoon. So I'm here to talk a little bit about why a small business decides to hire interns. But since I have the floor, I'm gonna do a couple of quick soapbox segues. Dr. Russ McGuire earlier talked about designing for maintainability and repairability. And I can't tell you how important that is because I'm not an engineer, I'm a pilot, and I'll find a way to break it. I promise you. There's a, may or may not be funny, this crowd, a joke. You have 3 fighter pilots, an Air Force fighter pilot, a Navy fighter pilot, and a Marine fighter pilot. And they get asked a question, hey, can you perform X maneuver, let's say? And the Air Force pilot says, well, if it's not in the manual, then you can't do it. And the Navy pilot says, well, if it doesn't say you can't do it in the manual, then go ahead and do it. And the Marine pilot says, we have a manual? No. So what my company, or part of my company does, is training, and in particular training for mostly government projects. And it's so vital in terms of no matter what the technology is that you produce. Dr. Lum just talked about a system for predicting collisions. Now whether or not it's required or not is another argument. But the question was asked, how much time does it give you? Well, in a vacuum, what does it matter? If you don't know why the collision avoidance alarm is going off and what you should do once it goes off, it's really not of value. So the training and remembering who the target audience for your product is so important. I work on a program right now with Insitu, and the eventual operator is going to be a 19-year-old high school graduate. So if you're expecting them to work with XML to program their route, probably not realistic. If you expect them to just look at an interface and say, Madison brought up a comment yesterday, that there's a battle between old airline pilots who want all these displays on the interface to look just like it does in an airplane. But for a 19-year-old kid that's grown up on Xbox, why? I mean, what does that information necessarily mean anything to that person? So a lot of what we do revolves around making sure the training program is designed so that that young user can get on the technology and use it successfully. So why does a small business like Corsair hire interns? So I originally was hesitant when Patrick asked me to come talk because we don't hire interns in the state of Washington right now. The division that supports most of my work is down in Orlando, Florida. And the reason they're there is it's kind of the nexus of military defense and space training. All your agencies are there, and anytime a new widget gets introduced into any service, it comes with training. Insitu doesn't just get to build an airplane and a system and hand it off to the military. They've got to provide all the training to operate and maintain it. So the companies that can help develop that have the instructional design experts that know how to develop, the task analysis, to figure out what the knowledge, skills, and attitudes required are to operate or maintain a system are there. What we also discovered is there's two organizations there. There's something called Full Sail University. I don't know if anyone's familiar with in Orlando. They're essentially gaming and arts type programmers out of there. And then the University of Central Florida has a pretty robust instructional system design program. So again, as a small company with not a ton of money to spend on that, we wanted to start looking into about 5 years ago, hey, is there a way to develop some relationships and get some of these young men and women into our organization and see what they can do? And that's the bottom line. We want to find out what can they do, because quite honestly, the intent would be to hire if they're capable. So it becomes a two-way street, though. We get a chance to evaluate someone, see what they're capable of, if they're a good fit for the organization, or, as has been mentioned, are they even interested in being part of a small business? The benefit to us in instructional system design, it's an evolving discipline just like anything. Well, since we do a lot of government programs, we get a little stale. We have to follow the spec, and it can get a little old, where you bring in a fresh perspective and say, hey, this is not, we're not doing that anymore. This is not 1950, where, we've learned new things about the way the human mind works. So it helps us really evolve and improve our ability to work those things. The graphic artists, the gaming programmers, they're obviously fresh blood and fresh perspective every time they come in. We're struggling with working with a Flash object, and hey, why are you guys working with Flash? We're on HTML5 now, or whatever the things are there. So we gain a lot from that. The students, they tend to learn quickly. Again, when they like the environment, I would say we're pretty successful with hiring the instructional designers. Most of the gamers, we can't afford them, and they go on to do great things at Microsoft and other places. So there's an example, at least from a small business, why we've had a pretty good success rate with interns. We've hired, quite frankly, most of the interns that we've hired over the last 5 years. I spent a good deal of my time also down with Insitu. They run a number of internship programs. What Madison was talking about, I think, this is just my opinion, I think it works really well with engineers and software and other areas in the company. It's a very logical fit. But one area where we've tried, and again, my opinion, I think it's an area where industry is just out so far ahead of academia, and that's in the actual employment and the use of the systems. So there are a couple universities right now that proclaim to have undergraduate programs in unmanned systems. They're not engineers, they're operators. So they've got a manned private pilot's license and some classes on airfield management those types of things. But there's really not a holistic understanding, and maybe they've flown a couple systems in a closed range, but they really have no concept of, hey, what if I have to co-locate with manned operations and have to explain to tower that my pre-programmed scannial waved off to the right instead of the left, and now you're going to have to wave off a couple of transport planes. Obviously, it's not going to happen. It's not the kind of perspective that brings. We can hopefully find a way there, but that's an area where I would say in academia in general, not from the engineering perspective, obviously you all are designing incredible things, but when it gets down to the user and the employment and the fact that quite often what you design doesn't get used the way you intended, the user has their own ideas about how they're going to employ it. So just as a converse perspective, from a small business perspective, we've had great success. Again, we are looking, I will be personally looking to expand the role in the state of Washington and find more opportunities and be keeping in contact with folks. But thank you.
Thank you, Art. So would you care to comment on, this is kind of a generational question. Those of us that have worked in organizations, you have people that have been with the organization a long time, have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise. And then you have people just entering the organization, that are newer, they have new ideas, questions, a lot of new energy. So what have your experiences been in kind of working that generational, those generational differences for the benefit of the organization?
Well, there's the adjustment on the old person's part, say my part, right, of just dealing with differences in attitudes and approaches, less formal attitudes in the workspace, things like that. But when you get over that, I feel like I get so much more productivity out of new folks that are coming in. They're not, for an example, an instructional system designer, like, how to build courseware and how to analyze tasks, but you may have no concept of the technology that you're working with, and you need to find a subject matter expert. Well, if I've been doing instructional system design for a long time, I know how to do it right, and I'll take your opinions, but I'm going to make it my way, where that new person's going to come in and say, wow, I don't know anything. This is awesome. I'm learning everything about this new technology as well as about doing my job. And I tend to, in general, it's nothing's 100%, but I find it much easier to work with newer folks with fresh perspectives than folks that have been doing things for a little bit too long.
All right. Well, with that, we have a little time to open up to the studio audience. So if anyone would care to come up and pose a question to our panel, we have a very varied group with university, industry, military, new career, all these perspectives. So please feel free to come up and address a question to any of our panelists, or a general one for all of us. Professor Leachman.
My question is for Art here in the end. Like you see from the plane in the corner, for a relatively small investment of $30K, you can get 12 to 15 students working essentially as your intern here on campus for a multi-year period. How does this compare, and is there any incentives to this model compared to the traditional model of bringing in only a couple of interns into your company to see how they perform?
I think just like you said, it's probably project dependent, right? It would be something that required the number of folks that you didn't have on hand and the willingness. I think you start running into the risk of too many folks outside your organization. There's a comfort level in bringing one or two folks in, right? Because you can kind of, for lack of better, vernacular, you can supervise and control, and you want to mentor. I think that would require a high degree of trust in that group's ability. So if it was something where your organization had a track record in what particular technology you were working on, and I'm sure you do, I don't know it personally, I apologize. But I think that would probably be where the resistance would come from, is there's a comfort level in bringing a couple people into your own house, vice hiring a whole group that's going to be somewhere else that you're not entirely positive of the work structure, the organization, all those types of things.
Okay, next. Oh, please.
I'd like to add to that. The employers that I've worked with, some of them really feel that they want students to come onto their campus, onto where they're working, because then they can integrate completely with the workforce there, with the engineers, and give them a better perspective of what it's like to actually work at that company. Although I think there is great value to having industry-funded capstones and to having experiences like that. I think they're a little bit different types of experiences. Certainly for students who are going to go on to graduate school, to research-level graduate work, they really are required to do some research on campus first. But for those who are going to go into industry right after their bachelor's degree, there's nothing that says I'm prepared than actually having had to show up at work and be part of the team at the company.
I guess I actually think there's a lot of merit in everything that people say. You know, one of the things that students don't get out of a mentored engineering experience at the company is peer level accountability. And there's something about peer level accountability that really shapes young minds. But it all depends. I mean, I want to get back to something that Art said, which I think is absolutely true. I mean, you have to trust people. And you can't do that. Like people know me. I mean, I have a brand. You know, I call people up. It's Dr. Chuck, you know, and everybody's like, Chuck. I mean, because I don't get into my title. But, you know, the thing is that I've made a relationship with these people over time, and so that they know, you know, I might crack a couple of jokes sometimes, but in the end, I'm pretty serious about whatever the deliverable is that I'm shipping. And, you know, you can't get away from that relationship building. And I've been kind of fortunate. I mean, I carved my own niche in this field before it, you know, project-based capstone's a lot more popular than it was 20 years ago. I mean, basically didn't exist except for Harvey Mudd. But the thing is that you have to have relationships, and relationships require continuity. Otherwise, what I agree with both my colleagues say here, that, yeah, I mean, you know, it's like if they don't know you, then they don't know you. So.
Okay. Madison, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I guess as someone who participated in on-campus research and then transitioned into an internship position, I definitely agree with Anna that they're not completely different experiences, but they're quite different in the sense that, like Chuck said, there's the peer level accountability when you're working with a team of students, and then there's also I mean, it wasn't an issue for me, but the students that I was working with, they were also trying to focus on their schoolwork at the same time, so it was more of an extracurricular activity than a job that could turn into a career. So I went from working on this research project, you know, like 8 or 10 hours a week to, you know, 8 or 10 hours a day. So it's both experiences I think are extremely valuable. Just aside, one benefit to the research on campus is that you can kind of take the opportunity to take it as like almost like a course. So you have more freedom to take the time to learn more of something that you're interested in, whereas when you're on the job, you know, you do want to be producing results. So that's just my 2 cents.
I think the ideal situation would be for every student to have an opportunity to go through Chuck's type of program, then get an internship, and then graduate and get a job, unless they're going to graduate school, of course. I mean, this isn't a competition between what's most important, internship or research. Research leads to internship. So often employers go to a researcher or to a lab, just like they did when they hired Madison. Our Formula One team is an excellent example of that. Industry really thinks that's where mechanical engineers prove who they are, and they consider that equivalent to work experience, not for hiring them, but for hiring them for permanent positions, but certainly for hiring them for interns. And I'm sure design, build, fly is considered the same way. And there are all kinds of projects on campus like that. What other projects do you have here at Wazoo that are similar to those?
Well, I mean, we have two things. We have a lot. Look, we have a lot of faculty, of course, just like UW, doing a lot of things, and I don't mean to discriminate or something, you know, because we have an entrepreneurship program. Mm-hmm. You know, we have my program. You know, the individual departments have their own capstone programs. I think and of course we have a lot of clubs. I mean, we have a whole slew of clubs that have opportunities for kids to get involved early on in their degree program, regardless of their level of technical sophistication. The thing that the only, you know, the gospel that I preach when I talk about my capstone is that it's goal-based, okay? And so it's not research, it's actually design. You have to deliver a product to a client. And my argument, which is a little longer than just the time we have, is that that actually really, really changes how the students think. It's not that those other things aren't important, because they learn very, very valuable skills. They learn how to get along with people and so on and so forth. But in the end, when for most of us that go out and work for an industrial partner or an industrial firm, we have a product or a process that we have to ship to a customer, and that customer has to be happy with it. And that emotional content, along with what I call rational empathy, is something that I think, you know, we could do a better job of in the university system. You know, we've gotten so much better. I mean, we've made tons of progress. I'm just speaking at WSU. If you look at the number of clubs we had 20 years ago and the level of commitment, and you look at the amount of money that we spend on clubs now, I mean, we're doing a lot better. But it's an upward path, because, of course, our grads have so many more demands on them now than, you know, they did 20 years ago. So, yeah, and I like co-ops. I mean, I think co-ops are great. I always encourage kids, you know, I say, you know, most people take 4.5 years, take 8 months, go do a co-op. You know, at the same time, it's really kind of a different skill set that they get out of a peer level accountability exercise like what I run. So it's not that mine's better. You know, it's the whole everything is best, and the more chance that kids get opportunities to put their hands on something, the greater coherence that they generate with the concepts that we're trying to teach them. And that coherence is what basically is the cornerstone of retention of the ideas. Coherence is the cornerstone of retention, of knowledge retention. And when you have a fragmented classroom, it's the reason that the kids core dump 3 weeks out, because basically they've never had to build that shared coherence with each other on what stuff really means. Now, yeah, they relearn. Yeah, you know, I know all that, and it's a longer story. You know, we and everything is trade-offs too. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, we only have so much time. You know, you get academics talking, and before you know it, they have the kids in school for 20 years, and then, you know, they work 1 year and they retire. I mean, you can't do that either, you know. So, I don't know. It's kind of a rambling screed, but you're kind of where I'm going.
Yes.
You're kind of like, yeah, that kind of incoherent was kind of coherent. So
I think the next step after participating in your program would be for students to be able to package their experience and sell that as experiential learning that's similar or equivalent to a co-op or internship program.
Well, and they do. I mean, you know, and yeah, I mean, they put that on their resume under experience. And, you know, I think about 30 to 40% of our kids get hired out of people who are sponsors for the clinic, which is pretty high, you know. And so the companies do use it to look at people. But, you know, at some level that's a skewed statistic, because those are our classic supporters anyway. I mean, you know, we can go on and on. You know, is it me? Is it my program? I've decided that very little of it is me, except the fact that I do go visit people a lot, and that makes a huge difference. You know, if I have one shining trait, it's that I know how to do lunch, and I get out there on the factory floor. But the rest of it is the students and good process and what everybody else tells me to do. I mean, and I try to listen. I know that can be hard for some people in this room to believe, but I do try to listen.
Okay, do we have another question? From the room. Okay, well, oh, yeah, please do. Come on up.
Yeah, so this is an educational panel, so it's not for one specific person, but just to everybody on the panel and all the professors, industry representatives. Talking about research, the JCATI is obviously a research center, but WSU and UW are both each kind of the largest educational and the largest public research facilities in the state. And I was just wondering if anybody had any feelings about if there is or should be, basically, could you say that we are educational institutions that do research, or are we research institutions that do education? Because I really think that focus is fairly profound to the impact on the students, and I just wondered where people felt that is or should be.
I'll kind of jump in on this really quick. It's funny that you should, bring up the difference between, education and research because to me, I know that when I was in the Aeroastro department, there were a number of research opportunities within the department. There were a lot of groups doing research and asking students to come do research with them. And I guess in my mind, I've always seen research as just another part of education. So it's like, just another course that you're taking, another learning experience that you're getting, another application of your knowledge. And, sometimes you get credit for it and sometimes you don't, but it's just kind of another benefit to being a student at that institution. Just like being able to take any of your other courses, you're able to participate in this particular research opportunity. So I think these universities are universities that teach. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, I'll take a shot. I think we're an education institution. And I don't like, I love you, Ryan, but Ryan's my graduate student. So I don't like, and every now and again they let me loose and I get up on a podium and speak my mind. We like to frame ourselves in that kind of dichotomy of education and research. What I would like to say is that we're an education institution, okay? And what we want to have is we want to have people involved who are whatever teachers, professors, et cetera, okay, who have a vigorous external life that includes a combination of research and industrial interaction. And what that is for each person is going to vary, but the one thing that I think that if we're going to evolve as an institution we should have is this idea of external life and internal life. Because none of the people that I work with who have no external life are very effective as teachers after about 5 years in engineering or 4 years. You have to have an external life. Now, we've kind of framed things in terms of research, and Ryan and I do research, actually. And I do all sorts of other stuff, too, which is, I do research on diversity issues and stuff like that. I had a postdoc this last year. I had a postdoc from China. But I really wish that we would get towards that idea that what we really want is we want scholars who have a vigorous external life that keeps them in touch, especially at a state land-grant institution, that keep them in touch with what's going on in the external world, especially in engineering. And then we transfer that knowledge, with a vigorous internal life, to the students that are actually kind of counting on us to figure out what the trends are. And it's that balance that I wish we would kind of get into the discussion rather than are we education and research. Because, some of the stuff I do is research, but a lot of the stuff I do is, I spend a ton of time fundraising. That's what I do to keep everything going. And then I count on people like Ryan to do the work. So.
Okay, Art, Anna, would you, from the industry, military point of view?
I just don't think it matters. I think you need both because, just like Madison said, the experience, whether it's in the classroom or somewhere else, is going to benefit you. And if it's the goal of the institution, is who should the institution be benefiting? And it's the whole state, the whole community, right? It's not just the individual going through whatever course or degree program you're going through. And that's a combination of both educating students and research, and I think both happen with research. I may be repeating myself, but I just think they go hand in hand.
Okay, Anna, anything you'd care to add?
No, I think that research is an integral part of education, and you couldn't separate it from that. And if you're going to have research as part of your education, you have to have real researchers doing real research. And in that case, you're going to even have some faculty who don't do any teaching. I would like to point out that a lot of faculty I've worked with when I ran an undergraduate research program, the faculty who only did research were the ones who wanted students in their labs the most because they wanted that educational opportunity to help, educate the students and start them off on their career, whether their career was in industry and research or at the university in research. So there's really no way to separate it in today's world.
Okay, well, I think we're starting to head towards the end of it. One more quick question from the audience. Yeah, please. Alex.
This practical experience is really important to their interest in finding new employees. And I'm encouraged by hearing the examples that are shared here. Madison, your story is great. As a state, though, how can we dramatically scale up access to student opportunities like the internships that, the programs that you all are running there? And please don't say, just give us a whole lot more money.
Well, I think just the way you work other, tax advantages or things. There should be. It doesn't have to be financial, but the message that I'm a big believer in the state of Washington, and want I keep preaching this to Chris, and I want I feel like we should be in front of UAS in the nation, not kind of in the middle in some regards. So you're gonna appeal to that desire of businesses in the state that want to continue to see. I mean, it helps me, right? My property value goes up if the state continues to do well, or the city or what have you. So I just think finding incentives. I can't right at this moment think of a specific tangible one, but ways to make cooperative programs that show that there are benefits beyond just us getting someone that we like. Just messaging. I don't hear much about it in the state. I mean, on the other side of my career from the military, I work with Congresswoman Del Bene on veterans affairs, and in there's a lot of active interest in finding ways, how do we get veterans back into the workplace, and there I have a very direct, tangible sense of what to do. But nobody's making my company do that. It's something we want to do because there's a lot of messaging around it, and I would just say if there were more messaging around the benefits, whether it's intellectual benefits to our company or the long-term financial benefits of finding that talent and working with it early so that they are ready when they graduate.
I think there are a lot of things that universities need to do to partner better with industry. We need to be more accessible to industry, and we need to have enough staffing to coordinate the number of approaches we get from industry. What industry needs to do is to partner better with the university, and how the state could encourage that, I'm not sure. Perhaps he's correct in saying something about messaging and collaboration, but industry definitely needs to take an active part in that, in cooperating with universities instead of trying to recruit students completely out of the blue and without any coordination with the university, because that ends up luring students out of the classrooms in an uncoordinated way. When I say coordination, I mean within their curriculum so that the students can continue to have success at the university. So we need to partner better together, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done on both sides, and that means people have to pay attention to the value of these experiences, not for the individual, but for the industry and for the universities as a whole.
I'll be a little bit more specific, Alex. You guys got to twist some arms at the state level, I think. And there has to be at some level, some elan and recognition, because that at some level is what the top corporate level thrives on, is that level of recognition. At the same time, I do agree with Anna. If we're not ready, then it's not going to go well. I mean, one of the keys to my success is that I will walk away from a deal, okay? And so when I sit down and negotiate, it's not some... come on, it's 10 grand plus 10 grand to build something. I have perspective on my level, okay? But one of the key things that I see, especially with a lot of young faculty, is they have very, very poor negotiating skills. And there's a skill complement that I could very, very easily draw up. And so what happens in the initial interaction that faculty have with industry is the faculty member will go and visit the receptive industry, okay? And then they will promise far too much work for the dollar amount that they are being promised, okay, from the industry. Okay, so the industry not really understanding what we do over here anyway. A lot of industries don't, okay? They're like, oh, wow, that's really a great deal. That's just weird, but you're going to do all that for $20,000? Sounds great, okay? So then what happens, the next thing that happens is either A, okay, the young faculty member defaults on the contract. Not physically defaults to the point where administration is involved, but basically does not deliver what the industry thought because they don't have a developed customer ethic themselves. Okay, they look at it. When we get an NSF grant, you have to turn in a page every year, even if it's $1 million. My companies never care what I spend the money on, but man, I've got to ship 7 machines in the next 2 weeks, okay? And if those machines don't come, then people are not happy. So either the young faculty defaults, or what's more likely is that the young faculty works like a crazy person to complete the work for the 20K. And then when you go and you ask that young faculty person and say, do you want to do this again? They look at me like, everybody knows what a loser this is. Not only am I not really getting that much credit, but I'm also working my patootie off for what's not worth it enough in the end. And, I don't really find that every now and again, we all get bad eggs. Like I've worked with 60 companies. I've had a couple of bad eggs, but I find most of the industry in the state is actually pretty okay. When I sit down and I say, you know what, I can't do that. Are you serious? And a great example would be like I went to a steel mill, okay, Nucor. First time there, they said, what we'd like you to do is work on head and neck down in slabs. Okay, I used to work in the steel business. I said, we had that problem 30 years ago, and they weren't able to fix it in the last 30 years. Why do you think my students can do it? I would walk away from the deal, right? So the company looks at me. The guys are great at Nucor. They're like, yeah, you're right. Why would we think that the kids would be able to do that? I kind of shatter that wall of unreality that exists between industry and academia as far as what we can actually deliver. And then we sit down and it's like, yeah, but we also need this other thing. And, we've delivered, 5 or 6 things to Nucor that they're really happy with. But if you don't equip young faculty with these skills, how can they really go out and be effective ambassadors? And at the same time, one could argue that you could teach industry how to dance a little bit better too. So I guess I'd say, the state has to create a status benefit for participating or a tax benefit or something like that. And then, you bring the dance partners together in the room and you say, okay, look, if we don't teach you how to do this dance, you guys are going to step on each other's toes and it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, I have tremendous friendships with people that I've, 15, 16 years now that have supported me that long. But I had to consciously, there were times when they asked me to do stuff that I just couldn't do. And I was honest. And that's really it.
Okay. Madison, do you have anything you care to add to that? Okay, well, this could go on all afternoon, but we do have a program to attend to. So I'd like to personally thank Art and Madison and Anna and Dr. Chuck for coming and sharing those insights and this great discussion, and all of you for participating. So let's thank our panelists. All right. Pezeshki.